You are listening to the Batflip Podcast, a baseball podcast from Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Damian and Matt.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Batflip Podcast. My name is Damian here with my co-host, Matt, coming to you on July 19th of 2022. Gonna go over our first half division breakdown, and we'll talk a little bit about the Home Run Derby, All-Star Game, and MLB Draft that happened over the weekend, and actually the game on as we're recording this right now. But before we get to all of that, how you doing, Matt?
Doing pretty good. Had a pretty good week and just hanging out and watching a little bit of the All-Star festivities. I've always felt like the All-Star game's cool, but it's a little bit, I feel like at times it could be a little bit overrated. But I had a lot of fun with it this year. I think it's been a pretty good event. We'll can't wait for actual baseball to start back on Thursday, though.
Yeah, it's been fun watching the Home Run Derby was electric. I loved that derby last night. The draft was pretty fun, but out of all the All-Star games through all all the leagues and whatever, I do feel that baseball still has the best one. It's the most competitive, at least.
Yeah.
Outside of the MLB and the NBA or the NFL and NBA, where they just don't defend at all.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool with the All-Star game this year. The last few years they've been doing the in-game interviews with players. I kind of like that. I think this year is the first time I've ever seen them do one with the pitcher while he's pitching. I thought that was actually pretty fun. I know some people didn't like it, but I thought it was pretty cool. So
yeah, I thought it was pretty cool too with when what Manoah was doing there.
Manoah, yeah.
But let's go
Struck
ahead
out the side.
Yeah, he did hit McNeil. The back foot slider that John Smoltz decided to call from the
back
booth.
foot slider, and then he threw a back foot slider and it hit him on the back foot. So
it hit him on the front foot actually, but
yeah.
Anyways,
either way,
yeah. Well, let's go ahead and just kind of look at the MLB draft a little bit. I know most people aren't going to care that much about it, but it's an event that they've been making bigger over the last couple years. They put it on All-Star Weekend now. First and second rounds being on Sunday. We had first pick Jackson Holliday, son of Matt Holliday. Second pick in Drew Jones, son of should-be Hall of Famer Andrew Jones. And then we had a kind of curious third pick.
Yeah, first off, congrats to Jackson Holliday and Drew Jones. Also, Tamar Johnson, Elijah Green were guys that went 4 and 5 that were projected up there and top high school guys, and it's so cool to see these high school kids. There's a lot of talk, especially this week, about the minor league pay and everything. But these kids, the pick values, slot values are $6.5 million and up for these picks. So they just overnight became multimillionaires at 17, 18 years old. That's really cool for them. Of course, Jackson Holliday, son of, like you said, son of Matt Holliday, and good shortstop prospect. I really like him. Drew Jones is a little bit more of a riskier prospect, but he's got the highest upside in the draft. But man, that number 3 pick, I didn't understand it when it happened, but it made a little bit of sense as the draft went on with some of the guys that the Rangers were able to get later in the draft because of the money they saved. But Kumar Rocker went number 3, and he was a guy that went top 10 to the Mets last year. I think he went number 10 to the Mets.
Yeah,
I know it was the Mets, but he had some medical concerns. They didn't like his elbow, and he withheld some medical information. And then he ended up needing shoulder surgery, which honestly, shoulder injuries are worse than elbow injuries when evaluating draft prospects nowadays. Because, you look at that elbow injury and they think, oh, you can get Tommy John, and just about everybody that gets Tommy John comes back fully from it. But, nowadays shoulder injuries can be a little bit more tricky. So, but he went number 3 to the Rangers, but they saved enough money to go grab a guy who was considered the top high school pitching prospect, and they cut him in the 4th round. So, because of the money they saved with that underslot. So the draft can be kind of weird with slot values and stuff. And of course, all these guys that got picked today, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2, we won't see for a few years in the major leagues. I think Kumar might actually be a guy that gets up there to the upper levels and the major leagues next year, and as well as maybe a couple of the relievers that got picked later on, like maybe Cooper Jerpy and Ben Joyce, the Tennessee flamethrower that got picked in the 2nd or 3rd round. So, but definitely a lot of fun. Congrats to everybody who got drafted. Some cool strategy. It's a lot of fun to watch. There's a lot more strategy to it than other drafts. So it was definitely interesting.
Yeah, because it's not one where you're going to have these guys up right away. Like you're mentioning, it's going to be years away. So to see the way that teams draft and the players they do to, because it's not like the NFL or the NBA where they have basically a set value for each pick, and you sign that contract. Like the pick will have like 8.5 million, but you could sign them to like 5 million and save that money, which the Rangers did with Kumar Rocker, and then overpay somebody later on. So it is pretty interesting to watch it, and I do like that they've moved it to All Star Week. I know I've seen some flack of that, but it kind of makes the event feel a little bit more, I don't know, hyped up. Like I, most people didn't used to care about the MLB draft because you're not going to see these guys for 2, 3, 4 years even. So most people didn't even really care. They're just like, we'll just figure it out when our team has the prospects, and then figure out when they were drafted and stuff like that. But
Yeah, it's a love hate for me. Every some of these guys, it's unfortunate. It's good for some of them too because used to the draft was going on during the college postseason.
yeah,
So, that was kind of tough. These kids couldn't, fully embrace the whole draft. But now, it really does put college coaches in a bind because it's so late that they don't know who's going to be coming back to their team or which high school player is going to go to college. So it's kind of it can be tough, but from MLB standpoint, I think it's pretty cool. We'll see when these guys are able to get to rookie ball or short season ball when that might happen. But this is the first year they've done this, so but definitely a cool event. Congrats to everybody who got drafted. Some pretty cool stories there. Actually, one more note. I saw a kid got drafted today that was a running back for Oklahoma State that had found that had watched some YouTube videos on how to pitch during the pandemic, and he actually got drafted today as a pitcher. He's throwing like mid 90s on the mound. I
huh.
thought that was a pretty cool one. That just there's stories like that you see all through the draft. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know. I had a kid drafted from Bakersfield. It threw me off. We were actually in a chat together when it happened.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was even a thing, and then they said it, and it caught me off guard. And actually, ends up that I know his dad. Oddly enough, I used to race at the track over here when he was racing. So it's pretty cool. Anyways, not gonna blabble on too much about that, but let's go ahead and move on to the home run derby, and we'll wrap this one up and then get to the breakdown. But the home run derby was last night. Was had some big names. You had Ronald Acuna, Pete Alonso, Kyle Schwarber, Albert Pujols was in it, and the guy who pretty much stole the show was rookie sensation Julio Rodriguez.
Yeah, Julio Rodriguez was incredible. He hit over 30 home runs in his first two rounds, and the third round is shorter, and he still hit like 20, even though it wasn't enough. I thought the home run derby was really fun. Julio Rodriguez was awesome at 21 years old, just showing off his talents. Albert Pujols was really fun to watch him come out and win his first round matchup against the National League leader in home runs, and Kyle Schwarber. I thought that was really cool. Pete Alonso got dethroned finally, and Juan Soto ended up, who's been in the news a lot, um, ended up. In fact, next week will be the week we talk about Juan Soto, probably for like half the show. But
Yeah,
um, he um, he ended up winning the Derby. I think it's kind of there's some things I don't like about the format for the Derby now. I think that it puts a lot of more on the pitcher than on the hitter because obviously the hitter needs to hit home runs, but if your pitcher's throws a bad pitch, you end up you're not able to take it because it's timed now. Instead of being able to take bad pitches, so you're just kind of having to swing at everything, and if your pitcher's not throwing good pitches, you don't have a chance. And I don't. The round format's kind of to me. I don't know. I mean, Juan Soto hit like half the amount of home runs that Julio Rodriguez did, but he won the Derby. I mean, I think that's kind of goofy, but either way, it was a lot of fun. The event's not really about who wins it; it's about the guys showing off their talents and having some fun. So I thought it was a really cool event.
yeah, it was really cool, and to see a guy like Julio Rodriguez go out there and just people didn't know what really to expect from him, and he went off, and there were some good matchups in there. The Schwarber Pujols matchup that went to overtime, and then they had to have another, or the swing off for extra time, and Pujols hit like seven, and then Schwarber couldn't match that. It was pretty fun. Um, and then who was it Soto versus who was his first matchup? Soto's
Um, Trying to remember, was it?
Jose Ramirez.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was against
yeah.
Jose Ramirez, and then he hit beat Jose Ramirez before even bonus time, and like threw the bat. And there was just cool moments throughout the whole thing. And it was probably one of the most enjoyable home run derbies for me, at least in the past like 5 to 6 years. I had felt like it kind of started losing its luster a little bit, and they got a lot more of the star players out there this year, and the fun storylines throughout, and just watching guys. Um, you know, in that part, I do kind of like the round format just because it's head to head. You have to beat somebody, so it makes it puts pressure on the first guy to hit as many as he can, then pressure on the second guy to match that. Um, but I do understand the time limit thing because Julio Rodriguez's pitcher was a machine, just pitched it in the same place every time, and all the other guys were kind of wild all over the place. So overall, though, it was a really fun event, and I felt it was a perfect kind of thing with the draft into that, and then leading into the actual All Star game that's happening right now. It just kind of seemed to flow perfectly.
Yeah, it did, and obviously the All Star game going on now, but there's been some cool stuff already early on. I mean, you had Giancarlo Stanton hit an absolute tank that kind of was reminiscent of the home run that he hit that went out of the ballpark a few years ago. That was pretty cool. They interviewed Alek Manoah while he was pitching, and he struck out the side with a hit by pitch in there. That was kind of fun because John Smoltz told him to throw a back foot slider, and then he hit him on the foot. So, but that was a lot of fun. And obviously the game's still going on, so there's not a ton of takeaways we can get. But Kershaw started the game too, which I'm sure for a lot of people was fun. I thought Sandy Alcantara should start it. I'm always somebody who believes in, if you deserve to start the game, then you should be the one starting it. But, Kershaw is really good, and I'm sure that was a great moment. And the fans out in LA loved that. So, but yeah, it's been a good event so far this year. Definitely, I think one of the better ones recently. We've had some pretty lackluster All Star games recently. I think this one's been pretty fun.
So I'm going to take a little bit of props for calling the Kershaw thing a couple weeks ago before it was a mainstream thing.
Yeah,
So I want to call that
well,
one. But I did find it pretty interesting that they had interviewed Otani before he went up. Tom Verducci did, and asked him like, "Hey, what are you going to do?" And he's like, "A first pitch, first swing, first pitch or whatever." And that was like through the stadium, and then he got a hit on it, and
yeah,
then Kershaw picked him off.
yeah. I
I think
mean,
that was pretty funny.
yeah, the whole. I don't think Otani was especially expecting pickoff throws in the All
No,
Star game,
he
but
wasn't.
um, I don't really understand. Hey, Kershaw wasn't the only one to throw a pickoff throw. In fact, Musgrove threw over when Otani walked in the second at bat. So I guess he was just kind of messing with him.
Yeah.
But anyways, we'll move on now and go into our breakdown. So
Yeah, let's go ahead and we'll start in the AL East, and with the Yankees leading this division still at 64-28 over the Tampa Bay Rays at 51-43, 13 games back. You got the Toronto Blue Jays in third at 50-43, 14 and a half games back. The Red Sox at 48-45, 16 and a half games back, and bringing up the bottom of this division, you got the Baltimore Orioles at 46-46, 18 games back. How about those Orioles?
yeah, the Orioles have been really good lately. It's been a lot of fun to watch them. I don't really think that they have any shot at the postseason unless they trade for Soto. But they've honestly been a real well balanced team offensively. They've had good contributions from everybody. Cedric Mullins leads the way in wins above replacement, even though people have been talking about how bad he was this year and how he was so much worse than he has been. Well, he's put up 2 wins above replacement in the first half. He's not quite been the hitter this year that he was last year, but he's still been a league average hitter. But the defense and base running has been really good. 19 stolen bases for him. Austin Hayes has had a bit of a breakout year. Ryan Mountcastle's been similar to what he was last year. He's been solid. But the big thing too is that Adley Rutschman coming up. He hadn't completely gotten going yet, but he's looked really good. All of his peripherals make it and analytics make it look like he's gonna just absolutely take off in the second half. He's had some bad luck so far, but he's already been worth 1.3 WAR in 46 games, but above league average hitter with the horrible luck he's had, and he's actually been a really good base runner too. He's been positive in the metrics of base running. Jorge Mateo's actually been pretty good for them. Um, Insane defensively, 9.7 defensive value on Fangraphs, and he's already stolen 22 bases, so that's been pretty fun. Even though the bat is just not good at all. But the pitching's been solid for them. They've had some guys you've never heard of do pretty well. Tyler Wells has been good. Jordan Lyles has actually been pretty good. Jorge Lopez has been great out of the bullpen. He's their all-star. They've had some pretty good outcomes there, and it's been a lot of fun to watch them. With their farm system so good, they might get some more reinforcements in the second half. I wouldn't be totally shocked to see Gunnar Henderson the way he's played at AAA. And honestly, it's really unfortunate too that Grayson Rodriguez got injured early in the season, because I think he would probably be up by now, and give him really a guy who I think is going to make an instant impact when he gets up to the big leagues, and I think he's going to be a future ace.
Yeah, Grayson Rodriguez is really good. I wouldn't be surprised to see DL Hall come up soon. I
Yeah.
mean, he's been crushing it down there as well. Gunnar Henderson, like you mentioned, but that farm system's just so loaded. They're the ones that drafted Jackson Holiday as well. Um, it's going to be a really interesting team to watch the next couple weeks because they've been so hot. They pushed this 500 record. They're in contention for a wild card spot. I think, what are they, like 3.5 games out or something?
Yeah.
But you're probably going to look at them as a team who still sells at the deadline, sells some of their pieces. And I'm not totally against that. Like, I do think you're a couple years away, at least a year away, from really competing. So they're going to be a team interesting to watch at the deadline for sure. But it's been really fun to watch them go on. I think it was a 12-game win streak.
Yeah.
And then they lost their last one before the break. But a team that most people were thinking would compete for 50 wins, maybe 60 wins. I mean, they're 46 and 46 right now at the break. So it's a real feel-good story for Oriole fans and a team that's been really fun to watch, like you mentioned. But looking at the rest of this, division with the Yankees leading up there, I mean, they've just been the runaway team, been so good in every facet of the game. Um, Aaron Judge is leading the league in homers. You've got good offensive contributions from Giancarlo Stanton. Jose Trevino, who is one of their all-stars, has been really good for them as well. Kind of a breakout for people, at catcher. Nobody expected him to be this good. Matt Carpenter has been a guy who's been insane for them. After basically falling out of the league, signing to minor league contracts, and then now getting a shot with the Yankees. And I think he's hit 13 homers already this season in like less than 100 plate appearances or something crazy like that. But they're just running away with this. And then Tampa's usually they're really good. I mean, 10 games over 500, but the Yankees just look unstoppable right now.
Yeah, the Yankees, I mean, there's not too much you can say. The only thing about the Yankees that I will say is that they are a team with the profile that they have. There is a chance that they could go on a slump at some point, and obviously they built a big enough lead that's probably not going to matter regular season, but there are some holes on this roster that need to be filled for the postseason. You've got struggling. You probably need a corner outfielder. With Joey Gallo struggling like he has, you never know I defended Aaron Hicks last week, but you never know when he might get injured. And then I think the starting pitching, some of their guys that were really having great years to start off, kind of cooling off. Nestor Cortez has been cooling off. Jamison Taillon's been cooling off. Jordan Montgomery's a pretty good number 3 guy, and then Severino's gotten injured. So, Garrett Cole is your ace, and he's going to be your ace, and he's a really great pitcher. But some of these guys have cooled off a little bit, and also Roldis Chapman came back and has looked awful. So, there's some places they could even get better on this team. But looking at the rest of this division, these 3 teams are some of the most interesting in the AL because they're all really real wild card contenders. The Blue Jays, I think they're going to be fine. They actually fired their manager this week, which was interesting. They seem like a team that just needs a kick, and that might be something that gives them a kick a little bit. But they should be fine. The Rays are interesting. The Rays have dealt with a lot of injuries, and the fact that they're still 51 and 41, when they get some of their guys back, it's going to be really, really tough to beat the Rays. I mean, you're looking at a team that, they're missing Wander Franco again, and they've been missing him a lot this year. He's going to come back at some point before the end of the season, and this is a team you could look out for if they, when they sneak into the wild card, and their pitching's really good. In fact, a shout out to Corey Kluber, who's been incredible this year. A 3.73 ERA, a 3.42 FIP. He's been really, really good, and he stayed healthy most of the year. And then Shane McClanahan started the All-Star game tonight. It's been incredible. He actually had a bad outing in the All-Star game, but and then the last team here, team that's really struggling is the Red Sox, and I think that pitching is finally catching up to him. And in fact, Chris Sale is back on the IL again.
Yeah, he returned and got hit with the line drive on his pitching hand. Ended up breaking, I think it was his pinky, and had to undergo surgery to get that fixed. And they just lost Trevor Story to the IL
Yep.
right before the break as well. So they're a team that, I mean, they have all the talent too. It just they need to get something in there with that pitching staff to kind of help them uh, bump up that rotation for a potential playoff run. But like you mentioned, I mean, this whole division above 500, and I think we said it was going to be one of the most competitive divisions coming into the year, and it's lived up to every bit of that. And I mean, you could say anyone from Boston, up, they can be true playoff contenders.
Yeah, for sure.
So, well, let's go ahead and move over to the American League Central, where we have the Minnesota Twins at 50 and 44, leading the division. We got the Guardians at 46 and 44, 2 games back. Again, then you got the Chicago White Sox at 46 and 46, at 3 games back. Then you got Detroit at 37 and 55, 12 games back, and then Kansas City at 36 and 56, 13 games back.
Yeah, so looking at the Central, the Twins are hanging in there. It's not been pretty, but they're been able to hang on to the top. They've got a really good lineup. Byron Buxton, he's been really good. He's actually been extremely unlucky still. He's only got a 216 average, but a 225 batting average on balls in play for him. And his approach is actually better than it ever has been. He's hitting the ball a long way. So lots of extra base hits. And obviously, with him, you talk about great defense and base running as well. Luis Arias has been one of the breakout stars this year. Hit 338 on the year. Doesn't strike out, and he's actually he's actually got a 450 slugging percentage. A lot of that related to the high average, but still 148 WRC plus. And looking down the lineup, Max Kepler's been really good for them. Jorge Polanco's been good for them as usual. Carlos Correa has been really good. He's dealt with some injuries this year, but he's been really solid. Trevor Larnach's been good. This whole lineup's been pretty solid. And then pitching wise, they've been a little bit better at the top than we kind of expected. Sonny Gray's been really good, and Joe Ryan's had a great year so far. But they really need some help in that pitching. The bullpen's been really bad, and they've had pitching injuries too. Chris Paddock being out most of the year's hurt, but they need to add some pieces, and they have the depth in their farm system to maybe add a couple pieces at the deadline. But looking down at the Guardians, um, they've they're another team that they're a pretty average team. They've got a lot of holes. They're a good team that has a lot of holes. I mean, their infield, Jose Ramirez, Andres Jimenez, and Ahmed Rosario have all been really good. Jose Ramirez has been incredible. He's an MVP candidate, as he always is. But and Andres Jimenez has had a breakout year. Ahmed Rosario has been solid. Stephen Kwan's quietly kept himself as a really good player. Definitely a great on base guy. Really a prototypical leadoff guy. Something you don't really see that much in the majors anymore. 361 on base percentage for him as a rookie, really solid. Josh Naylor has been good for them, but pitching wise, I mean, they got Shane Bieber's been fantastic, but their bullpen, they always find a way to scrap together some pitching. Tristan McKenzie's been good. They could probably use some help in their rotation and in their bullpen, go behind their top guys. They're a team that they just scream average team to me. But in this division, that could be good enough.
Yeah, it could be good enough, especially since they're only 2 games back. They're only 2 games over 500, but like you mentioned, this division's not like the AL East at all. Um,
Yeah,
Minnesota, you never know. I mean, they're 3-7 over the last 10. Their pitching has really struggled as of late. Emilio Pagan, who they were using as their closer, just basically got kicked out of that role for Johan Duran, who should have been in it to begin with. Um, but losing Paddock hurt for them. They need to get another arm of some sort in there, just to give him some more innings. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see them trade for Michael Pineda again, a guy who, he's on the Tigers this year, but was with Minnesota the years prior, and just gave him a nice solid arm to get him through 5 or 6 innings. So he wouldn't be a guy I wouldn't be shocked there. Cleveland, you mentioned, they always have good pitching. Between Bieber, McKenzie, Quantrill's been all right as well as a number 4 guy, but Plesac hasn't lived up to what they wanted him to be this year. Savali's been terrible. The bullpen's been really good, but they're just getting Karinchak back. He's looked not great since he's returned. So they're really going to need him to round back into form if they want to really make a push for this division. And then you got the White Sox there at 46 and 46. They just seem to have so much controversy around them right now. I mean, every day we're wondering if this is going to be the day Tony La Russa's fired, and it seems like they're just going to keep him through the season. I mean, they have had some good performances. Dylan Cease has looked amazing, a 2.15 ERA this year with a 2.67 FIP. Hendricks has been good. Johnny Cueto's been actually really good for them as well. Kopech's been pretty decent. Giolito struggled. You really need him. A guy who was looked at as going to be your ace. You need him to kind of turn it around. And then on the offensive side, Jose Abreu's been what you expect: 304 average, 387 on base, a 147 WRC plus. Luis Roberts been really good as well, 301. On base is down only at 334, but he's not known for that. But a 126 WRC plus. Tim Anderson, when he's played, he's only got 65 games played, but a 121 WRC plus there as well. But some other guys have really struggled. Yohan Moncada hasn't played a lot. He hasn't looked great. Eloy Jimenez hasn't played hardly at all. I think he got injured again. But overall, I mean, this team is a team that we thought would be better, and they're just screaming average now.
Yeah, looking at this team, this is a really polarizing team, but I do think that they end up winning this division. They have too much talent. I know that they're struggling, that they've struggled this year, but look at them. They're only 4 games back, and there are gaping holes on the top 2 teams. And this team has a lot fewer holes. The rotation's going to be okay. Dylan Cease is great. Lance Lynn has not got going yet since he came back from the injury, but a lot of that's been a bad luck. I mean, he's got a 7.50 ERA in his first 7 starts, but he's got a 4.07 xFIP. The strikeouts are a little down, but he's not walking guys. So, you would expect him to be back to close to decent. Lucas Giolito's got a 3.66 xFIP, even though his ERA and FIP are a lot higher than that. I think he'll end up being okay. There's just a stretch with him. Obviously, like we talked about, Dylan Cease has been great. Bullpen is still pretty solid. They could use a little bit more depth in that bullpen, I think. They might add that at the deadline. But the lineup, like you said, they've dealt with so many injuries, and they also have dealt with the fact that Yasmani Grandal has not been good. And I have a feeling Yasmani Grandal is going to figure some things out in the second half if he's healthy. I mean, and Eloy Jimenez is the same way. I have a feeling he's going to figure things out in the second half. So, this team has a lot fewer holes in the top 2. I know they got the controversy surrounding them, but it's not like, I mean, they've played themselves back into they're 3 games behind right now. And if you look at some of the projection systems, Fangraphs has them at a 55% chance to make the playoffs. So, we'll see what happens with them. But the other 2 teams here, the Royals and Tigers, I mean, the Royals, I don't want to go in a rant on them, but that franchise, they have got to move on and find some more. They got to change in the way they do things. Their their ways their baseball has passed them by. They're the team that I'm surprised doesn't have Tony La Russa as their manager. We'll put it that way. They really need to figure some things out. They need to do a much better job of using analytics. And I know that, I think that there's a place for everything. I think there's a place for old school scouting. I think there's a place for analytics. I think there's a place for old school stats. You got to combine all of it. And I think the Royals just look at old school scouting. And, that trade they made last week where they traded a draft pick for Drew Waters is a perfect example of that. I mean, you're looking at a guy who doesn't really have that much, statistically to offer, but he looks athletic and he's got a pretty swing. So you trade for him and you give up a chance to help rebuild your farm system. I mean, there are some good things with the Royals. Vinny Pasquantino, Nick Prado, those guys are going to be good. They do have a good farm system. Bobby Witt's kind of turned it around. There's a lot of good going on there. And then, looking at the Tigers, I mean, it's been a disaster of a year for the Tigers. I've been saying that they were getting ahead of themselves buying in the offseason, but, you look at some of the pieces. I mean, Eduardo Rodriguez apparently is nowhere to be found.
I
Um,
can't even get a
they
hold
don't
of
know
him.
where he is, and hopefully everything's okay with him. Um, but that Javier Baez has not been good. You look at their prospects that have come up. Riley Green he's had his moments where he's looked really good. He's been a little inconsistent, but he's got he's a guy that's going to strike out. I mean, but he's looked pretty good so far. Not hitting for a lot of power yet, but about a 344 on base percentage. He doesn't look overmatched. Spencer Torkelson just looked totally overmatched for the most part. He had -1 WAR, and he just got sent back down to AAA. So there were some things that made you feel like he wasn't totally overmatched, and it was kind of like maybe he should stay at the big leagues to figure it out a little bit. But I don't know if I would have sent him back down. It's not like they're replacing him at the big league level with anybody that should be playing in the field. I mean, I guess they're playing. I don't even know who they're playing at first at this point, but they're not playing Miguel Cabrera at first, are they?
I don't know. I don't know. Scope might be getting some time there
Scope
too,
playing first. I mean,
or Willie
either
Castro
way,
or something. But
yeah, either way, like you need to have Torkelson take his lumps at the big league level because it's not like he's striking out 25%. It's not like he was striking out like 40% of the time and just swinging at everything. It was just totally like there was something mechanically messed up or whatever. But their pitching's been really bad outside of Tariq Skubal, who's been really good. So, there has been that one bright spot in Tariq Skubal, how well he's done. But other than that, I mean, this team's just been a disaster this year. So,
yeah, some of the pitching. I mean, some of the other guys. Andrew Chafin's been good for them. Alex Lang has been really good
yeah,
as well. Joe Jimenez, Michael Fulmer. I mean, gives them pieces that if they want to move at the deadline, they should get some, some decent prospects back for guys like that. Like I fully expect Fulmer, Jimenez, and maybe even Chafin to be moved at the deadline. Gregory Soto's been good as well. He's their all-star this year, but this offense has been awful. I mean, you look at it.
yeah,
Scope is a 56 WRC plus. Javi
he's their
Baez
leader in WAR.
74. Yeah, Derek Hill 59. Willie Castro 80. Daz Cameron 91. I mean, they just have not been good at all. As far as Torkelson, I think it's going to be a relatively short stint down in there. I really think it's just, hey, we're going to come into the All Star break. Let's put you down there in the minors where they've already had their All Star stuff, and get you a little bit of confidence. And then in a week after we get back to playing baseball or whatever, we'll call you back up. Just go back down and get some games in you, get a little bit more confidence down there, just confidence booster at least, and then come back up and play there. I really wholeheartedly believe that's what they're doing. I don't think it's going to be, hey, we're sending you down until September or anything like that.
Yeah, I hope so because I don't think this isn't a Kellenic situation with him. I feel like it's a situation of a guy who is really is struggling some. There's something mechanically off probably, but it's not like he's just completely overmatched by big league pitching. Like he's had a bad year, but there's definitely room for him to grow at the big league level. It's not like he's so overmatched he can't try at the big league level, especially when you're not contending and you really don't have any shot at you don't really have anybody else to play first base either. I mean, so
Yeah, it's just literally like I said,
yeah,
it's going to
yeah,
be a confidence boost situation there, like, totally
hope
for
so.
him. But yeah, they're bad. Kansas City, I mean, you have a couple pieces that you expect to get moved as well. Andrew Benintendi's been a hot name.
Yeah,
There was a lot of rumors with the AL East teams, but then now that it's come out that he's unvaccinated and he can't play in Toronto, I wonder how that's going to hurt his market there, to any of those teams. But in general, they've had not much to look forward to either. Uh, Kansas City, I mean, Benintendi's really been the lone bright spot. Bobby Witts looked really good after he struggled to begin the year. Um, and then, they just called up Vinny, what was it, Pasquantino or
Pasquantino.
Pasquantino? That's a name I'm going to have to learn to say.
Yeah, he's looked
Um,
good too. His stats aren't showing it yet, but he's looked good. He's only played 20 games. His numbers are going to come along.
yeah, and then they called up Nick Brotto, and he looked pretty decent in the one series, like in the 4 games that he played in Toronto. Um, but overall, I mean, you wanted to see more from MJ Melendez so far, and he's only batting 217 with a 309 on base. Um, Whit Merrifield 240 with a 292 on base this year. Just not much to really talk about with the Royals. They just are the team that you mentioned has just let things pass them by and don't have any clear sign of really being anything in the near
Yeah,
future
yeah. They
without
don't
some
have a
wholesale changes.
they don't have a timetable.
Yeah,
They're not. They're just kind of throwing stuff. Like it's like that Benintendi trade they made last year. They're just kind of throwing stuff and trying to be a closer to 500 team every year instead of actually like trying to put together a full rebuild and try to build up their team.
yeah, yeah. It's been interesting to see what they've been doing, to say the least. But let's go ahead and jump over to the American League West now, where we have the Houston Astros leading this division at 59-32. You got the Seattle Mariners at 51-42, 9 games back. The Texas Rangers at 41-49, 17 and a half games back. The Angels at 39-53, 20 and a half games back. And then the Oakland A's at 32-61, 28 games back.
Yeah. So starting off, and this might be a hot take with the way the Yankees are playing, but I think the Astros are the best team in baseball. They they don't have as many holes as the Yankees. I think that they don't have I don't think they have somebody quite as good as Garrett Cole, but at their top of their rotation, although Justin Verlander's been really good this year. I don't know if he's quite as good as his numbers have been so far, but he's been great. This team's been really good, and at the plate, I mean, their lineup has no holes in it. I mean, you run out there when they're all healthy. Jordan Alvarez, Jose Altuve, Kyle Tucker, Jeremy Pena, Alex Bregman, Michael Brantley. I mean, every single one of those guys is over. Well, the lowest out of them all those is a 118 WRC plus from Jeremy Pena, and he's got 2.7 WAR, and he's been one of the best defensive players in baseball this year. So you look at those guys, and then they could probably add another outfielder, definitely add a catcher. They might be a player for Wilson Contreras when it's all said and done, but they've been fantastic. The pitching staff, like I said, Justin Verlander's been just remarkably good after coming off Tommy John at age 39. Framber Valdez has been great as he usually is. They do such a good job with their development of pitching. Christian Javier stepped into the rotation and been really good this year. He was part of that no hitter against the Yankees, and I'm telling you, this team is phenomenal. They really are, and as a team, they have a sub 3 ERA and a 113 WRC plus, which is well above average at the plate and on the mound, and not to mention the fact that they've been one of the best defensive teams in the league. So they've just been an incredible team, and they're fun to watch.
Yeah, and then just a couple other pieces that's been good for them as well. Jake Odorizzi's returned recently, and he's had a pretty solid season. And then in that bullpen, Rafael Montero's been
Yeah,
really good. Hector Neris has been pretty solid. Ryan Presley's been what have just come to expect from Ryan Presley. And then Ryan Stanek has been really good as well. I mean, a .57 ERA, even though the FIP's a 314, but still even then, um, that you'll take that out of a bullpen arm all day long. They've been really solid. I think the bullpen was the main thing coming into the year for me the main concern, and they've really proven that doesn't really matter that much. And Verlander's looked great coming off Tommy John surgery, and the pitching staff as a whole. You mentioned with Javier stepping in, being mostly in a bullpen role last year, stepping in and being their third most valuable pitcher so far with WAR. And then none of this has Lance McCullers Jr. hasn't even pitched this year, and he will probably be making a return in the second half of the season, close to the playoffs. If as a starter, maybe even as a one of those bullpen arms that you come out and he'll just throw 37 curveballs against the Yankees again. Um, but they've been really good. But the hottest team in baseball is in this division. That's the Seattle Mariners, winning 14 in a row and really vaulting themselves back into contention here. They're in a wild card spot right now. I mean, even winning 14 games in a row, they're still 9 games back in the division, so it doesn't look like they'll be making a division run. But it's been really fun to watch what the Mariners make this turnaround, being led by Julio Rodriguez. Logan Gilbert's been really good. George Kirby's been solid. I know they sent him back down, but he's expected to come right back up. And they've just had a feel good team, really. I mean, Ty France got back, and he's been really good for them all year long. Just overall, this team's been fun to watch.
Yeah, so looking at the Mariners, I remember at the beginning of the year I said I thought that they would have a worse record this year, but they would be better than they were last year as a team. Well, they're better than I expected them to be this year. I think that some of the guys that their farm system guys, I said all of them had to do really well when they came up, and some of them had to be immediate impact players when they came up compared to what typically happens, even with great prospects. And Julio Rodriguez has been that. 2.9 WAR. He's been one of the best players in the big leagues. 21 stolen bases and 16 home runs in just 91 games. First 91 career games is incredible. His plate discipline's been get better. He started off striking out a lot. That number's come down. He's looked really, really, really good at the plate. How about Eugenio Suarez? Nobody's talking about him, but he strikes out a lot. But man, the guy's been really good. A 127 WRC plus. He's hit 16 home runs as well. He's walking a lot. 336 on base. 2.4 wins above replacement. He's played a really solid third base. He's actually been their second best player by WAR, ahead of Ty France, who has missed some games, and the defense really hurts him, but he's been really good. The 148 WRC plus. There's just a lot of good outcomes on this team. I mean, I did not expect a guy like J.P. Crawford to come in doing so well. You look at a guy like Taylor Trammell in his 32 games, he's had a 125 WRC plus. They've been great at the plate, and then on the mound. The one thing that worries me with this team is they've been incredibly lucky on the mound. A 3.53 ERA compared to a 4.06 FIP is really, really that's a lot of spread there. That'll probably come up some, but Logan Gilbert's been really good. Robbie Ray's started to look like himself on the mound. His strikeouts are coming back up. He's at a 29% K rate now. You look at George Kirby, as you mentioned. He's a guy that I felt like would be an immediate impact arm at the big league level, and he has been. There is a little bit of concern with a couple of their pitchers maybe having innings limits that they'll go up against. I think that someone had mentioned that Kirby might end up not being able to pitch, the full season without coming up too close to an innings limit. I'm not sure about that, but I'd kind of heard some people talking about that. But the bullpen's been really good. Andres Munoz, who was also in that trade for Austin Nola. They traded Austin Nola for Ty France and Andres Munoz. Well, Andres Munoz has a 2.92 ERA and a 1.93 xFIP this year in 37 innings. He's been incredible. He's that super hard throwing right-hander out of the bullpen. They've just been a really good team. Paul Sewald's been good again out of the bullpen. These guys are good. I really think that they are better than the Red Sox, and I think they're better than the Rays. The Rays, if they get fully healthy, might be better, but I do think this Seattle Mariners team at this stage, they need to buy, and I think they're going to fill up a couple key pieces. They have a great farm system, and I think they're going to be in the playoffs come October for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, I feel they're going to be a sneaky team in on, on the impact starters that are available, and then maybe even another bat. I wouldn't be surprised to see them jump in on. I mean, they've dealt with the Reds before. I wouldn't be surprised to see them jump in on a Luis Castillo, maybe even Brandon Drury trade, give them a little bit more flexibility. With infield, outfield, with Drury, and then another top of the rotation guy to go there. I think that'd be a really good fit for them.
Yeah, and watch out for the Seattle Mariners. This is no info that I've read or anything, but just in my opinion, this could be a team that is a lot more aggressive than people realize for Juan Soto too. They have the farm to be able to do it, and I think they have enough financial flexibility to take on, like a Patrick Corbin contract to help get it done too. So that could be something that this team adds. Could you imagine an outfield with Juan Soto and Julio Rodriguez?
Sure,
I
home
mean,
run
my
derby
God.
final.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I know we'll talk about more about the Juan Soto next week, but it's going to be interesting to see what it takes to do that and what it would look like from the Mariners, because I'm assuming you're going to have to part with some major league pieces, at least some a major league younger guy, and I'm not quite sure who that would be for the Mariners, if it would be a Kirby or what, but they've been a really fun team to watch. You got the Rangers, who, I mean, they go through their stretches where they look really fun. John Gray's looked pretty decent as of late. Marcus Semien and Corey Seager have really started to turn it on the last month or so and look like the players that were expected to be with their contracts. But this was a team we mentioned before the year. They just didn't have the pitching depth. They didn't have the depth in the lineup. The bullpen wasn't that great, and it just basically, I mean, I think they've outperformed what we expected them to at the moment. If you had told me they were only going to be 7 games under 500 or 8 games under 500 going into the All Star break, I would say that's probably 5 or 6 games better than what I would have expected. But they're a team that they're building for the next couple of years here, and they should be aggressive, in the offseason. But at the moment, just nothing to look for there. And then the Angels, a team that I think I predicted to win the division. I thought they were going to be a lot better. Losing Anthony Rendon hurts. They've had Mike Trout has struggled as of late, especially, and just overall the team just doesn't seem to have it. I mean, they've had some good stories, and Patrick Sandoval's looked pretty good. Otani's been incredible, like we expect him to be. Noah Syndergaard's been pretty good as well. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets flipped at the deadline, even because he's only on the 1 year deal. But overall, I mean, the Angels just not been good this year.
Yeah, starting off, I just want to mention on the Rangers real quick that, I think that they're on about the pace I kind of expected. I expected them to win about 70 games, but maybe a couple more than 70. But the Rangers are the fact that Corey Seager has a 124 WRC plus with like a 240 BABIP is he's gonna I think he's gonna just go on a tear in the second half. And there's been some good outcomes for the Rangers from some of their younger guys. Nathaniel Lowe has been really solid at the plate. That's been a nice thing to see. He needs to work on his defense at first base some, but he's been good at the plate. And, Adolis Garcia has looked a little less like he was a fluke last year. Um, and Marcus Simeon and Corey Seager obviously have been as advertised this year. Although Marcus Simeon hadn't been quite as good as he was with the Blue Jays, he's still been good and he's getting better. But they have a lot of work to do on to build depth on that team, and they have a pretty good farm system, so they could maybe have some of that come internally as well. But you talk about the Angels, and it's just sad to watch their guys waste away here. I mean, and I'm starting to get a little bit worried about Trout going forward. He's been fantastic this year statistically. I mean, you look at his 270 average, 368 on base, 599 slugging, but the contact rate's starting to get a little bit scary for me. He's really, really, really struggling to make contact right now. His strikeout rate's up to 30%, and it's been like progressively going up all season. Like his first month it was kind of normal for him, and he's striking out a ton. So I'm a little worried about that. And of course, he's injured again now all of a sudden. Shohei Ohtani obviously has been fantastic. It'll be interesting to see if he ends up getting traded. I think that would be an off-season thing for sure, but it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But I mean, this team's just got so many holes. I mean, you got three. Taylor Ward's been great this year, but other than those three, I mean, you got just nothing. And pitching wise, I mean, it's Shohei Ohtani, Patrick Sandoval's been solid. Behind those two, I mean, Noah Syndergaard's been okay, Lorenzen's been okay. The bullpen's been horrible. Um, I mean, this team's a mess, and I don't know. I've been really high on them the last couple of years, thinking that they just had some bad luck, whatever. They've been a mess, and I don't know when they're gonna pull out of that. But looking at another mess too, last team in the division, just to mention the A's, they're probably gonna be moving a couple more pieces at the deadline, although they don't have a whole lot left to move. You might see Ramon Laureano go. I wouldn't be totally shocked to see them shop around Sean Murphy at the deadline, but I don't. I think that they're probably going to hold on to him just because they can probably. He's been a little bit unlucky at the plate this year. I think he could end up having a better season next year, and maybe get more value for him. You kind of be selling low on him right now, but um, the A's just don't have a whole lot there. So
Yeah, the A's are just, we've talked about them through the fire sale they've had this year, and then getting ready to trade a couple other pieces. Like I expect Sean Murphy probably to get traded, um, and maybe even Paul Blackburn, who's their All
yeah,
Star this year. It wouldn't be a big shock to see them get traded there, but just not a lot to talk about with.
they already traded. They already traded their fourth best position player, who only played 56 games, Christian Bethancourt.
Yeah,
Like,
Montas probably gets traded, but
yeah.
he's been dealing with some shoulder stuff, so it's going to be interesting next couple weeks. He was supposed to return on the weekend, and then they pushed that back now to after the All-Star break. But he's going to probably get 2 starts before then, so he's going to have to show that he's truly healthy again for them to get the return they're wanting from there. But they've had some bright spots. Zach Jackson has looked pretty good. AJ Puck has looked pretty good. Sam Moles looked decent for them as well. Um, and then on the offensive side, Murphy's looked really good. Ramon Laureano's looked all right at 115 WRC plus. Other than that, though, just nothing has been encouraging
Yeah.
with the A's. But let's go ahead and move over to the National League East, where you have the New York Mets at 58-35, leading the division. You got the Atlanta Braves at 56-38, 2.5 games back. The Philadelphia Phillies at 49-43, 8.5 games back. The Marlins at 43-48, 14 games back. And then the Washington Nationals at 31-63, 27.5 games back.
Yeah, so the Mets have continued to be really solid. They have they're a team that they're really interesting because they put up really good at bats at the plate, don't strike out a lot, and they put the ball in play. And they don't hit for a lot of power, but they've had really good outcomes at the plate so far. Their pitching staff is really good. You know, they've had Max Scherzer has come back from his IL stint, looked really good. Edwin Diaz is putting up one of the best seasons I've ever seen from a reliever. He's been incredible. I know the ERA at 169 is incredible, but it's not like the best ever. But he has an 082 xFIP right now, and he's striking out over half the batters he faces. That's just insane. You look at some of the other guys. Carlos Carrasco's been decent. Taiwan Walker's been really good actually. So Chris Bassett's been all right. So this team's been really solid. They definitely need some more bullpen depth, I think. Other than Edwin Diaz, I mean Seth Lugo's kind of struggled at times. You look at maybe a guy like Adam Ottavino has a good ERA. He's been pretty good for them. But it's like Tommy Hunter, Joely Rodriguez, Adonis Medina. Like some of these guys just aren't all that good. Drew Smith, like they've had a lot of guys pitching in their bullpen that probably don't trust too much. We'll see. Maybe Trevor May comes back at some point and helps them out there. But the Mets have been good. The Braves have just been on a heater ever since the start of June. They've been playing lights out. The rotation's been great. Spencer Strider had a bad outing, his last outing before the All-Star break, but he's been fantastic. Max Fried's been great. Kyle Wright's been so underrated this year. Nobody's really talking about how improved he is. He's been good, and the bullpen has been really solid. Even Charlie Morton started to look a little bit better. He had a bad first half for his standards, but he's looked a lot better lately. Pitching staff's been great. The offense, Dansby Swanson has been fantastic. Riley has been killing it. I think you definitely want to see Ronald Acuna Jr. start to get going, but Michael Harris has kind of saved this offense too this year. He's been really good. Um, so we'll see what happens. One other note with the Braves is that Spencer Strider's another guy, kind of like we talked about with George Kirby, that maybe ends up coming close to an innings limit at some point, where they might need to push him to the bullpen. He's obviously got the stuff to pitch in the back end of the bullpen with his 100-mile-an-hour fastball, but he might be another guy that's like that. And while we're mentioning pitchers not throwing a ton of innings, there's been talk about the Mets and Jacob DeGrom coming back soon. I forgot to mention it. He's had a simulated game he was supposed to pitch delayed a couple days because of shoulder soreness, which they say it's precautionary, but that's not a good sign in my opinion. So hopefully he ends up getting that remedied pretty soon.
Yeah, I'm not too worried because he's just seemed. I mean, when he's had his starts, he's looked like the Jacob Degrom. I mean, the stuff has been there, and that. So I really do think it's probably just a little extra of the soreness there. I think he'll be back pretty soon with Jacob Degrom there. But looking at the Mets offense real quick, overall, I mean, this team's offense has been really good. I mean, even with Luis Guillorme, you're getting a guy who has a 119 WRC plus. Mark Canha 124. I mean, their top 7 guys have the lowest WRC plus. There is Francisco Lindor, who's at a 117. He's been their most valuable player this year, which I know that's boosted by the defense, but he's having a decent offensive season. I mean, 324 on base is you'd like to see that a little bit higher. But for a guy with the defense he gives you, I mean, he's been pretty decent at the plate. I mean, 16 homers and 66 RBIs from that guy. I mean, he's been pretty good. And then the pitching staff, I mean, they've been pretty decent overall. For having lost Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom for a good portion of the season, being in the spot they're in, should be extremely lucky. But the Braves, they're a team that, I mean, they won the World Series last year. We've seen them, especially getting ready to come to the deadline, make. Alex Anthopoulos has always made, under the radar moves to help them. Last year especially. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them be an aggressive team at the deadline too, even if it's some under the radar guys. But Max Fried's look good. Spencer Strider, Kyle Wright's been big help for them this year. With Charlie Morton struggling, Kyle Wright kind of stepped into the role of what you would expect Charlie Morton to be. And Spencer Strider has kind of stepped into the role you expected from Ian Anderson, who's really struggled this year. So the Braves, though, I mean, they're just a good team. I mean, they're going to be a hard team to beat in the playoffs. They're so stacked on that lineup, especially if Acuna starts getting going. Ozuna's there, Riley, Olson's been good. They're going to get Ozzy Albies back, and then you look at their bullpen. Kenley's, I think he's back, isn't he, at this point?
He is.
So you're going to have Kenley, you're going to have AJ Minter down there. If you can figure out what's wrong with Tyler Matzik and if he gets to throw in strikes and his velocity back, overall, I mean, the team's just really good.
Yeah, one other note for the Braves, Kirby Yates is throwing again.
Yeah.
So he might be another piece to add to the bullpen here in the second half.
Yeah, and then looking at a team like Philadelphia, I mean, we've talked a lot about them this year. Losing Harper really hurt, and I think that's what really takes them. I mean, I know they're in the hunt right now. Where are they looking at the wild card standings? They're the last team in, kind of tied with the Cardinals, just barely ahead by like .001 on their winning percentage. But losing Harper hurts. I don't know if you can really fill that void in with a deadline acquisition. I mean, I know I've heard them mentioned in an Andrew Benintendi, possible trade, or Michael Taylor. I mean, that's just to help fill a center field defensive gap. But overall, I mean, the defense still just isn't there. They're not that great defensively. The pitching's been pretty decent. The bullpen needs a lot of help, and I just don't see that this being a team that can make themselves good enough this year to be a real playoff threat, especially not having Bryce Harper in that lineup for probably the rest of the season. I mean, there's probably late September, but I just don't see it for them. And then the Marlins, they've been really good. Sandy Alcantara has been really good for them. Pablo Lopez has been really good. Trevor Rogers has really struggled. Their big offseason additions of Jorge Soler and Avisail Garcia has really struggled. Jazz Chisholm was looking like a breakout star for them, and then he's battled some injuries as well. And they're a team that they're just not quite there yet. They need a little bit more of that pitching to develop from the minor leagues, and they need some of their hitters. Brian De La Cruz has not looked good since he's been up. Jesus Sanchez, expected to be an everyday player this year, hasn't been that great for them either. And then I mentioned there are other offensive guys that, big offseason signings that haven't really, filled that need for them so far.
Yeah, I mean, the Marlins have been solid, for the most part. Their pitching, like you said, the pitching's been good. Sandy Alcantara has been so good. Pablo Lopez has been really good. Their bullpen's okay. I do want to mention, Braxton Garrett is a guy who was picked real high in the draft a few years ago, dealt with a lot of injuries. He's come up and he's looked really good at the big league level. And Jesus Luzardo is pitching again in the down in the minor leagues. He had looked pretty good before dealing with some injuries, but his stuff looked great to start the season. So that might be another guy to look out for with the Marlins going forward. But this is a team that they're not quite there, but they're in a little bit of a similar situation. For me, is like the Orioles are right now. They're close. They got a great farm system. Max Meyer came up the other day and pitched his first big league game. They got a guy like Yuri Perez in the minor leagues that's rocketing up prospect boards. I mean, they're a team that they've got some really good pieces coming, and they're already a pretty decent looking major league team right now. They're a tough out at least, and so we'll see what ends up happening with them. I doubt they make the playoffs this year, but that might be a team to kind of look out for next year. Especially, I think they could replace the Phillies up there eventually, because the Phillies, they're good this year, but they have a lot of big contracts and they're aging a little bit too. They don't have a lot of youth, so we'll see what happens. And then obviously the Nationals, just They're bad. I mean, they're so bad. There's not a they have two good players on their team. They have a couple of young guys who are okay. Kybert Ruiz has actually looked really good behind the plate, which is an encouraging sign for them. But I mean, they have two good players on their team, and one of them's going to get traded soon. So
Both of them
actually,
might get
all of them are
traded
going to
soon.
get traded soon. I mean, can
Yeah.
you imagine? Like, it won't be long. It's entirely possible that the best position player on the Nationals is Kybert Ruiz with a 1.1 WAR at the All Star break.
Yeah.
I mean, and an 84 WRC plus.
Yeah.
So man, and then the pitching wise, I mean, they pitching wise is barren as well. I mean, they don't have anybody. I mean, Josiah Gray's stuff has looked pretty good, 27% strikeout rate, but I mean, their starting rotation and their bullpen's been bad. So um, and I don't know what to say about this team. These guys are really really bad,
Yeah,
and
and this might be a real hot take, but they absolutely need to trade Juan Soto in my eyes. It makes no sense for them to try and sign him to a 14-year deal with all that money, with so much invested in Strasburg and Corbin as it is, and have your farm system be barren. And you have nobody to really trade to make that farm system be good outside of Juan Soto. So, like, if he were to sign that contract, where's the real avenue that they get
they'll
good? Because they have money already wrapped up. You're looking at a potential sale of the team in general, anyways, and you have no good pieces
you'll end up being
outside
the
of Juan Soto.
Angels.
Well, even I don't even think it'll be then the Angels, because like you already have your big money deals wrapped up so far.
Well, the
Like,
Angels did too with like Pujols on his bad contract for so long, and I mean they had like the Josh Hamilton contract and stuff that held them back, and then you had Trout on his like $400 million deal. So I mean the Nationals. I mean the fact at the end of the day with Soto is that you're not going to find a player that's anywhere near as good as him
no, that's
long
not. You
term.
don't need to.
But
That my thing is, you need to get as many young talented pieces in that trade to start your right direction of your franchise. Like, s- s- keeping Juan Soto is not going to do you any good. Like in 5 years, if you have a barren farm system and you're still one of the worst teams in baseball. Like, if you trade Juan Soto and you get four top prospects and two young players now, and you get off of Patrick Corbin's money, like, you are set up in a better situation at that point than you would be signing Juan Soto to a 14-year, 15-year deal, whatever it is, and then where are you at from there? You have three big money deals on the books and no prospects.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think Juan Soto probably accepts that deal from another team, but I think he kind of understands that the
Yeah.
Nationals are going to be really, really bad if he stays there. I mean,
Yeah.
and that there's really no. I mean, they won't be good even with a trade for of Juan Soto. The farm system's already bad. I mean, there's no depth, so they might end up getting three really high end prospects and a couple of young major leaguers, but their farm system will still be mid tier at best, and they'll still have a horrible major league team. So
Yeah, I mean,
like
you're not expecting them to jump from a
yeah,
20th ranked team
so
to the first best prospect. No, like you have nothing
so
right now.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Get
I
get
agree.
anything in there.
It's just one of those things where it's like the situation is just bad in general. I mean, regardless of which way you go, I mean, you're going to be bad for a long time. So, especially with even and even for a team, I mean, the Nationals have run a pretty high payroll for a long time, and but when you cripple yourself with deals like the Strasburg and Corbin deal, plus the fact that they play paying so much deferred money, like I think they're paying Scherzer $15 million for the next 5 years or something, like that's just a bad situation.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll talk more about that next week. We need to move on to the
Yeah.
NL Central. And we got the Milwaukee Brewers there at 50-43, leading this division, 50-44 with the St. Louis Cardinals, only a half game back. Then you got the Pittsburgh Pirates at 39-54, 11 games back. Chicago Cubs at 35-57, 14 and a half games back. Then the Cincinnati Reds at 34-57, 15 games back.
Yeah, this division's going to come down to the wire. I mean, both the Brewers and the Cardinals are kind of opposites. The Brewers have great starting pitching, especially when they're healthy, and a great bullpen. The Cardinals have a great lineup. Um, it just kind of depends on which side wins out on that. The Brewers have had some kind of worrisome things lately. Josh Hader's actually looked really bad lately. Like he was having like a historically good year, and then all of a sudden, he now has a 4.50 ERA on the season.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. He's given up a lot of home runs lately. He's walking guys at a higher clip. He's still striking everybody out, but but Brandon Woodruff, he started to get going. His ERA's back under 4. His FIP is 3.04. Corbin Burns is great as usual. Um, Devin Williams has been great in that bullpen. We'll see if Freddie Peralta ends up coming back at some point. I'm not sure if he's coming back or not, but you look at their lineup, and I mean, it's Willie Adames who is carrying their lineup again. Victor Caratini's actually been really good at the plate, only 44 games, but he's been one of their better hitters. Keston Hiura has been the weirdest player in the big leagues this year. He's not going to keep that up. A 128 WRC plus with a 44% strikeout rate. In fact, I think they sent him to the minor leagues, but you just know he's not going to keep that pace up with that strikeout rate. And then they just this team's just they're a very average lineup with a good pitching staff that doesn't have a ton of depth. So, but in this division, that might be enough because the Cardinals have been struggling a little bit lately, and the Cardinals pitching staff's not that great themselves. So,
Yeah, I think the Cardinals are probably the best team here in
yeah,
general. I think that they have a much better offensive depth there. That with Arenado and Goldschmidt, they should be able to they should be able to overtake the Brewers. You've got basically nothing from Tyler O'Neill this year. He's back now. Tommy Edmonds looked good. Dylan Carlson's looked better as of late. Nolan Gorman's looked pretty solid at a 120 WRC plus there. So I think the Cardinals, they're a team. I think they're going to be a sneaky guy at the deadline too to make some impact move. If it's offensively or if it's to add somebody else to this pitching staff. I mean, Miles Michaelis has been really good, a 2.45 ERA. Adam Wainwright just seems to never be bad, a 3 ERA this year. Dakota Hudson's been, you would expect him to be better, but coming off of missing a full season, a 4.10 ERA, it's not terrible for him. But you've got nothing out of Steven Matz so far. 37 innings, a 6.03 ERA. You really need to see something from him. They do need another piece in this pitching rotation if they really want to compete with the Brewers. I think they have the lineup advantage and the defensive advantage for sure. They're a really sound defensive team, but they just need to get somebody else in that rotation to be with Michaelis and Wainwright because Matz was Steven Matz, Dakota Hudson, and Matthew Liberatore have not been good this year.
yeah, and
Uh,
don't forget that Jack Flaherty's been bad and injured all year
yeah,
again. So,
he's only pitched 8 innings this year,
yeah.
and he looks like he's got injured again, and they're not sure when he's going to come back now. So their bullpen's been really good, though. Giovanni Gallegos and Ryan Helsley have been really good this year. I mean, Gallegos has 3.75 ERA, but a 3.14 FIP and a 3.29 ERA. I mean, he's been really good. Junior Fernandez has been another guy, only in 13 innings for them. He has a .68 ERA. Um, they have some pieces there, but I think they just need another rotation arm there. And then the offense, I mean, they could add another outfielding DH bat. I mean, I know they have Pujols, but you can add another bat there, and I don't think anyone would blink an eye at it. Given it's an impact bat, but overall, I mean, I think this team's the best team in this division, probably.
Yeah, I think so too. But moving on, the other three teams here, we won't spend too much time on them. But looking at the Reds, they actually have interesting pieces to trade. They're definitely going to trade people at the deadline. They've actually been not that bad since that horrific start. I mean, they've been bad, but they're not as bad as they started off. They started off what was it, like 3-21 or something, and
Yeah, something like that.
since then they're 34-57 on the year. So since then, they haven't been all that bad, even though they've been bad regardless. But they'll probably move on from Luis Castillo. They'll probably move on from Brandon Drury, who's played himself into a pretty decent trade candidate. We'll see about Tyler Mahle. I think he's a guy who I don't know if I wouldn't hold on to him, but he's got a couple years of control left, but he probably still doesn't fit their timeline, so they'll probably move him as well. But they'll definitely get some good pieces back for that. The Cubs are really bad. They don't have a whole lot of major leaguers. I don't think Wilson Contreras will get moved. Ian Happ will get moved. Um, I mean, you worry about some of their guys that are there now. I mean, Patrick Wisdom's just been okay. You know, Seiya Suzuki has been a little bit polarizing, but he's been back for a little while. He's okay. Um, he's been awful defensively this year, but he's been better. He's been okay at least. And then pitching wise, the pitching staff is terrible. I will say that Keegan Thompson has really been been a little bit of a breakout guy for them, as along with Justin Steele. Both of those guys have shown some promise going forward. But Marcus Stroman signed that big contract. He's been very mediocre so far. But we'll see what happens. They do have some trade pieces though, and then the Pirates. There's some encouraging things for the Pirates. You've got to see some of your guys get called up. We'll see. Maybe pitchers maybe get traded. I think Jose Quintana is definitely a guy that looks to be traded at the deadline. He's had a pretty good year, and there's a lot of talk about David Bednar as well. So we'll see what ends up happening with the Pirates. But not a ton of guys for them to move on from. But I could definitely see that. I highly doubt they move on from Brian Reynolds, but his name will be out there, until they lock him up. So.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Brian Reynolds did get traded if they got a good enough package. I mean, I know they said they want to build around him, but I'm still not quite sure how he fits their timeline. I just don't think they're going to be good enough in the next 3 years to really make that deal worth it. I would probably trade him now, but Bednar's probably going to get moved. Quintana's a guy who's absolutely going to get moved to the Pirates. They've shown some flashes. It's been good to see some of their young guys come up and at least get major league time there. Looking at the Cubs, I mean, you mentioned their pitching staff is just bad outside of Keegan Thompson and in that rotation. There's even been some rumors that maybe Stroman's a guy who could potentially be moved to the deadline. I don't see that happening, but there's been some rumors at least of it, and we're going to start seeing the rumor mill pick up over the next couple weeks. But they do have some bullpen arms that's pretty interesting. Scott Efros is a guy Efros is a guy who could be moved. David Robertson and Michael Givens are probably two guys that will get moved. I could really see that. And then I don't know. I could probably see a team maybe wanting to trade for a Wade Miley. I mean, if the Cardinals, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he's been,
Yeah.
19 innings, but he's been solid. I could just see him being a back of the rotation, somebody that just wants a solid innings eater to get in there if he's healthy. I mean, that's going to be the big thing. If he's healthy, I could see somebody trading for him. And Wilson Contreras, you would expect him to get moved, but you never know. I mean, there's been some rumors that they might want to try and sign him to a contract extension, but you would think that would have already happened. Ian Happ probably should be moved for the Cubs. He's a guy who's been volatile before, and he's having his best season. He should probably get moved. And then looking at the Reds, Luis Castillo, Tyler Mahle, Brandon Drury, you mentioned guys who all absolutely should be moved at the deadline. I expect at least Drury and Castillo, but Mahle probably should be as well. He's probably at the height of his value at the moment as well. Just overall, though, those bottom three teams, they're nowhere near competing. It's going to take a couple years probably for each of those teams to get into position, at least. But jumping over to the NL West, you have the Los Angeles Dodgers at 60-30 leading the division. You got the San Diego Padres at 52-42, 10 games back. The San Francisco Giants at 48-43, 12.5 games back. Colorado at 43-50, 18.5 games back. And then you have Arizona at 40-52, 21 games back.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the Dodgers, they've been really good this year. Freddie Freeman's been hot lately, playing extremely well. Trey Turner's been great. Mookie Betts has been great. He's even missed some games, and he's still got a 3.3 WAR. The whole lineup's been performing well. I mean, Will Smith's been really good. Gavin Lux has broken out to a certain level. You'd like to see him hit for a little more power, but he's been great getting on base. Um, so you obviously, I think, you're still worried about Cody Bellinger. I mean, he's been really, 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 really rough at the plate again. So, but we'll see what happens. Max Muncy is he's having such a weird year. He's having a real similar year to what he did in that COVID shortened year. Just an unbelievably low batting average on balls in play, leading to a 160 average. But I mean, his strikeouts and walks are similar to what they always have been. And he's hitting for some power, at least 9 home runs. So maybe the elbow's affecting him a little bit, but definitely. definitely a guy that you look to maybe improve some as the season goes on. And then, you look at the rotation. I mean, they've been missing Walker Bueller, and they've still been really pretty solid in the rotation. Not quite as good as they have been in the past, but Kershaw has been really good in his when he's pitched this year. Only 12 starts, but he's been solid. Tyler Anderson's looked really good. Tony Gonsolin, he's really outperformed his peripherals, but the 2.02 ERA is really, really solid. Julio Urias is kind of the same way. This is a team that their peripherals are on the pitching side. Are some of the best in the big leagues, but they are outperforming them by a pretty good bit. So we'll see if they end up coming back to earth there a little bit. But man, that offense is going to carry them regardless. They're just a really, really, really good team.
Yeah, the pitching depth is really going to be the key for them. I mean, they've lost Walker Bueller. Andrew Heaney's been, only started 3 games for them. He's supposed to be nearing a return. You're going to get Dustin May back at some point. He started to pitch his first rehab games after the Tommy John surgery last year. And then the bullpen depth has really been tested. I mean, Evan Phillips has been really good for them. Craig Kimbrell, I mean, if you look, he has a 4.35 ERA, but a 1.95 FIP. Like, as of late, he's been really good. He had a horrendous start. And then a big blow up game against San Diego when he got hit with a pitch in the back. But outside of that, he's been pretty solid. Daniel Hudson, they've lost for the year with a torn ACL. Brewstar's been injured and on the IL right now. So the bullpen's going to be a concern for them. They're going to need to get another guy there. But there's not much this team can do. I mean, on the offensive side, you mentioned Bellinger. You've mentioned Muncy struggled. Justin Turner, I mean, he really struggled for a good part of the season. He just last couple weeks he's really heated up there, but they've got good contributions from Trace Thompson and Jake Lamb. I mean, they've had some really good games and contributions from them. But looking over at the Padres, I mean, 10 games back there, they're nearing the return of Tatis. Probably it's looking at late August at this point, middle August to late August. Keeps getting MRIs and some progress, and then swinging bat, and then now some are saying that they don't like what they're seeing, but that it's still some progress. So who knows what's going on there? But I mean, overall, the team has been good. Musgrove has been really good for them. A 2.42 ERA, 3.08 FIP. Darvish has been his ERA is 3.41 and his FIP's 3.44. You'd probably like to see that be just a tad better for Darvish, but I mean, can't really complain. He's striking people out, not walking as much, which is a big key for him, as long as he doesn't walk guys. Sean Manaea has been pretty decent, but you'd like to see him be better. He has a 4.11 ERA and a 4.07 FIP. That's like number 5 starter. He's kind of your number 3. Clevenger's came back and he's looked solid as well. Blake Snell's really struggled. He's had some good starts, but he's really been struggling this year, especially with the command. 5 walks per 9. Mackenzie Gore looked really good to start the year. He's kind of fallen back lately, and he's almost up to over 4.5 walks per 9 as well. So they're going to be a team that I think could make a pitching move. I even wouldn't be surprised to see him maybe trade Blake Snell away and acquire another pitcher. And then on the offensive side, they're a team that has been looking for an outfielder. There's been some rumors that they could be interested in Joey Gallo, maybe trading for him or Brandon Drury. But I mean, Jake Cronenworth's been good for them. Manny Machado, Profar has been pretty solid, a 114 WRC plus. Nomar Mazar has actually been a really good story for them. In 36 games, 122 WRC plus. This is a really good team. They just need some more around the edges. You need Tatis back. Playing themselves into a 10.5 game or 10 game hole against the Dodgers right now. Even though you play each other 9 times in September, I just don't know if you're going to be able to make up that gap.
Yeah, I mean, the Padres are struggling right now, and I just don't see where this team can. I feel like they're outperforming already what they are right now, especially without Fernando Tatis Jr. But they've traded away so many pieces that would have made this team really good. I mean, this is the prime example of a team that got way too aggressive. They traded away Ty France and Andres Munoz for Austin Nola. Austin Nola's been bad for them this year. Like the pieces they traded for Blake Snell. I don't even know if they've been good, but Blake Snell hasn't. You look at this team's looking pretty rough right now. Just when it comes to the amount of talent and stuff on the team, Obviously, their record's still good. I think they still have a chance, especially if Tatis comes back. But we'll see. And then, but moving on, looking at the Giants, 48-43 so far this year. They've had some pretty good outcomes. Their best position player by WAR has been Austin Slater, believe it or not. But they've been solid. Jock Peterson's had a great year at the plate. His defense holds him back with him being a left fielder slash DH. When he is in left field, he's not any good out there. But 135 WRC plus. The pitching staff's really their key, though. They've been so good on the mound. Carlos Rodon's been incredible. Logan Webb's been incredible. Alex Wood has been really, really good. His ERA's higher than his peripherals. But this team's big calling card, or this team this so far this year, their defense has been horrendous. You're looking at like a defense that, based on Fangraphs numbers, minus 47.6 defensive value compared to the Phillies, who we've talked about all year, at minus 22. I mean, they so far defensively they've been twice as bad as the Phillies. I mean, you're looking at a lot of aging players probably playing into that, but man, that is really, really, really rough. So we'll see if they can figure out a way to improve that some. But this is a team I think is probably better than the Padres, but they just so far haven't been as good. So
Yeah, I probably still think that the Padres are a better team, but this is sort of what I expected the Giants to be last year. I know I've said that multiple times throughout other episodes, but I didn't think they were that good last year, and they've kind of backed that up this year. I know it's really been a steep drop off in defense, but I just think the offensive players that they had last year, losing Buster Posey, you weren't expecting Brandon Belt and Brandon Crawford had the same years they were having, or as they had last year at least. And then on the pitching side, I mean, you lost Kevin Gossman, you got Rodon, so that kind of washes it out there. But Anthony DeSclafani, who was a big piece for you last year, has been bad when he's pitched this year, and he's out for the year. Now, Alex Wood, I mean, he's struggled at times, but he's kind of just been that 4 or 5 guy. I just feel like overall this team it wasn't that good last year. They overperformed, and I feel like they're at the numbers they should have been at last year now. Um, but anyways, moving on to the last two teams, you got the Rockies there. You've had really good years from C.J. Crone, and Charlie Blackmon's been pretty solid. Connor Joe's been really good. Jose Iglesias, I mean, I know he only has a 97 WRC plus, but a 301 average and a 340 on base for a guy who plays the type of defense he does is really solid. If you can get anywhere close to league average, I think that's really valuable. Brendan Rodgers had a really good start to the year. Has really fallen off lately. And then you've got Chris Bryant back. He's looked pretty good when he plays. I mean, 33 games. Sure, he only has 4 homers, but a 302 average, 366 on base, a 119 WRC plus. It's all about just letting him play some more. He'll get acclimated in Colorado and be just fine. The pitching staff has really been the issue for them, which is normally the issue there. Chad Kuhl's been probably their brightest spot at a 4.11 ERA this year, but a 4.46 FIP. Kyle Freeland's been bad. Antonio Senzatella has not been good either. Herman Marquez has the worst graded fastball in baseball now. Overall, I mean, they just not many pieces here on the pitching staff that give you much hope. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a guy like Daniel Bard be traded at the deadline for something.
yeah, I mean, this is a team that, like you said, I think you hit the nail on the head with most of it. But Chris Bryant's starting to get going since he came back from his injuries. Is pretty encouraging for them. They signed him to a huge contract, and they really need him to play like it. And he has since he's come back from the IL. He started off really slow, and I wonder if part of the slow start was dealing with injuries a little bit, and then maybe he's fully healthy now. But you look at like you mentioned, the pitching. I mean, there's just not a lot there. I mean, obviously, when you're looking at Colorado, you never know. With like Kyle Freeland has been, just he's been okay, but he's got a 450 FIP. You don't know, that might be a full run lower if you're in another ballpark. I mean, you just never know with Colorado and how their pitching works. But I will say that Tyler Kinley is a guy who's been extremely good. He might be somebody that could move at the deadline. I know he's young when it comes to big league experience, but a 174 FIP, a .75 ERA in 24 innings. Really, really solid. 27% strikeout rates. Really nice. He's 31 years old, so he's probably not a part of their long-term plans. And you look at maybe like you said, Daniel Bard, he's outperformed his peripherals in cores, so I would move him as soon as you can. But you never know what the Rockies are going to do. I mean, they're one of those teams that they're trying really really hard to compete every year because they're signing guys in the offseason, signing big contracts, but they're just not good at it. So it's just hard to say what ends up happening with them. But we'll see. And they're also so unpredictable when it comes to the trade deadline. I mean, they didn't trade their guys last year that were on expiring contracts, and they got nothing for them. So
Sure.
I mean, it's especially John Gray, who they didn't even offer a comp, a qualifying offer to, which was weird. So, I mean, this is a team that they make some weird choices, but we just never know what's going to happen with them.
Yeah, and then looking at the last team in the division, you got the Arizona Diamondbacks. They've had some good stories. I mean, Christian Walker, 22 homers this year, a 188 BABIP and a 204 average, 319 on base. That's not great, but a 115 WRC plus still. He's been about on average to a slightly above average defensive first baseman. Wouldn't be surprised if some team takes a risk on him as well at the deadline if they're willing to move him. Ketel Marte and Josh Rojas have both had pretty good seasons for them. You would expect a little bit more from Dalton Varsho. I think he's really struggled, especially as of late, only having a 299 on base percentage. David Peralta, just kind of been exactly what you'd expect there. Carson Kelly really struggled to start the year. He's looked a lot better as of late. The last month, batting 283 with an 880 on OPS at least. So, I mean, they have some pieces on the offensive side that show some hope. They're going to probably get Corbin Carroll probably at the end of the season, if not next year. But they're top three in the offensive side with Corbin Carroll, Drew Jones, and Jordan Lawler now in that farm system is a really good start. And then looking at the pitching staff, you got Merrill Kelly, who's been pretty good this year, 3.26 ERA, a 3.33 FIP. Zach Gallen, a 3.56 ERA, a 3.99 FIP. Zach Davies has been kind of what you'd expect from Zach Davies, actually right around a 4 ERA, just slightly above 4 on the FIP. Joe Mansupply's had a really good year for them, really broken out as a mainstay in that bullpen. Bumgarner has a 3.88 ERA and a 4.59 FIP. I mean, you want that to be better, but at this point, if you get that from Bumgarner, if he could bring that FIP down a little bit, I think you take it. Overall, I mean, just in the pitching staff, you would expect some of these guys to be a little bit better. Luke Weaver, the FIP is really low at a 2.89 and an 8.78 ERA, so that's going to take a step back. But that top of the rotation at least has shown some signs of hope at least for them. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a guy like Merrill Kelly potentially be moved.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting team. Definitely, I would definitely move Merrill Kelly. Even if he's got some control with him, he's 33 years old, so I'd go ahead and move him. Look at a couple other guys. You look at maybe Joe Mantiply might even get moved. He's 31. I know he's got a lot of control, but 31-year-old reliever, I'd probably move him as well. He could probably fetch you something in return that's at least interesting. Um, you know, it'll be interesting to see what this team does. They do, like you said, they have a lot of really good prospects. And man, Christian Walker, I mean, that is a crazy stat line with him. A 115 WRC plus with a sub 200 batting average on balls in play. His plate discipline numbers are really good, and he's hitting for a lot of power. He's hitting the ball really hard. I think he could go somewhere. And he's also been, as for a first baseman, he's been a great defensively too. So I wouldn't be surprised if he got traded somewhere and then absolutely took off for whoever he gets traded to. And Ketel Marte's kind of weird. He's had a great year offensively. 127 WRC plus. He's been his walking a lot more than he ever has, but his defense has been really rough. So which is kind of unusual for him. I don't think he's been a great defender in his career, but he hasn't been a really bad defender necessarily. That's definitely kind of interesting to look at. And defensive metrics can be kind of wacky sometimes. So, maybe Ketel Marte's, maybe he'll flip that around a little bit. And
I
but
do
this
know
team,
he was dealing with a hamstring injury
yeah,
too.
that might have worked. And he might be DHing some too. Might affect
Yeah,
that.
but in general, I mean, overall, I mean, looking at each side here, I mean, there's definitely going to be some good division races. The AL Central, the Central really divisions are going to be good races. The NL East could potentially be a really good race as well, depending on if Jacob deGrom comes back and what the Braves are able to do at the deadline if they do anything there. And then looking at the wild card races in both sides, Right now for the American League, you have 4 teams under 4 games out in the wild card, and then in the National League, it's really down to, I mean, San Francisco's a half game out, and then Miami's 5.5 games out there, with the Cardinals pretty much tied with the Phillies. So it's going to be interesting to see if any of those teams do anything at the deadline to try and push themselves up. But really, it's going to be divisions in the National League, and then I think the wild card and even a division in the American League. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be fantastic coming down the stretch. I think you're definitely going to see the NL East be a crazy division race between two big rivals, both the Central divisions, like you said. I think Brewers Cardinals is going to be another similar great race between two division rivals. The AL Central is just crazy between 3 teams, and you just have no idea what's going to happen there. I think that the wild card in the NL, I think it's going to be a good race between 2 or 3 teams. I think you look at like the Giants, Padres, Phillies, and and Cardinals all being really close together for 3 spots. I wouldn't be totally shocked if the Marlins found a way to get close-ish, but I don't think they're going to have really a major chance. So, but looking at the AL, the wild card race in the AL is going to be pretty wild as well. You've got the 3 teams from the American League East. I think that they'll battle with the Mariners, and maybe a team from the AL Central gets hot. I mean, if the Twins or the White Sox, yeah, I think the White Sox are probably going to win some games go down the stretch. So whichever team finishes second there might have a chance. I don't think the AL West third place team is going to be anywhere close, but one of those AL East teams is going to be really disappointed to not make the playoffs this year with the amount of money that they spent in the offseason.
Yeah, I would be. I want the Mariners to make it, but I'm also here for the chaos to see 4 AL East teams make it. I mean, Boston's only 2 games out right now of Toronto. I mean, only 3 games behind Seattle. If Seattle does start slumping there and Boston's able to do something, and you get all 3 AL East teams in wildcard spots, that'd be pretty insane. Just from a standpoint of looking at it and having 4 teams from one division make it, it's incredibly unlikely because they have to play each other a lot, but it would be pretty fun to see at the end of the season if that was the case. But it's going to be some fantastic races down the stretch. We'll make sure to keep you guys filled in on that. Next week we'll have a trade deadline preview. We're actually going to be recording on Wednesday next week, instead of our normal Tuesday, and then we'll preview everything with the trade deadline, what rumors we're starting to hear, what rumors we're starting to see, if any trades. I wouldn't be surprised to see trades start picking up in the next week, even for some teams wanting to jump ahead of the deadline. And then 2 weeks from today, you're going to have the trade deadline, and we'll record late that night and have everything, all the trades in place for that one. So some big long episodes coming up over the next couple weeks here from the Batflip podcast, because it's going to be pretty fun. You got anything else you want to wrap up on, Matt?
Not a lot. Like you said, I think the trade deadline this year, I think it's gotten a lot crazier. It looked like it was going to be maybe a fairly tame deadline, but with the Soto news, and I mean, I think it's going to be wild. I I think that that it's really going to shape some of these races. I think you look at baseball in general having a good year. I'm excited. The All Star game. There's been a lot of good talk just all around about the All Star game. Kind of in the general public, a lot of people watching it that aren't mainstream baseball fans, which is pretty cool. And I'll say, I was also, just gonna throw out. I'm going to the Braves game on Saturday, and man, I'm excited because they're playing the Angels, and I cannot wait to see Shohei Ohtani play. He's pitching Friday, so I'm gonna miss his pitching performance by one day, but I'm really, really excited to get to see Shohei Ohtani play. I'm really disappointed that Mike Trout's not playing. The Angels only go to Atlanta like once every 6 years or something until the schedule change. But I have got to see Mike Trout before. I was actually at the last game that the Angels played the Braves in Atlanta, which is kind of crazy. But they it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But man, I was just so excited to get to see somebody like Shohei Ohtani play baseball. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty fun. But that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this episode of the Batflip podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Thanks, everybody.